Welcome to Channel Security Secrets. I'm Lou Raban. On this show, we expose the untold secrets and critical insights from the people shaping the future of cybersecurity sales in the Trusted Advisor channel. If you're looking to up your game around selling security, stick around. Channel Security Secrets is brought to you by Cyber Defense Group, on a mission to shift cybersecurity from reactive to resilient. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest. He's a serial entrepreneur, thought leader, and trusted advisor with over 40 years' experience driving business growth. As a founder of multiple companies, he's led global expansion and built powerful distribution and reseller networks worldwide. He's also a featured speaker at major events, including the Cowtown Business and Capital Summit. A recognized channel leader, he's created an ecosystem of trusted partners to address the evolving landscape of cyber risk. Let's welcome the president at Stillwater Ecosystem, Stacey Horne. Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lou. Great to be with you today. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so Stacey, just to get it kicked off, what would you consider the biggest secret to your success in the channel?
Great question to kick it off. So, I'll address it in three ways. My gray hair gives away the tenure of my career. And, behind the desk, pre-channel, by that, I mean direct relationships with the providers. And then obviously our more familiar model now, the TSDs and channel. But I will tell you this, the secret to success is equally shared among all three stages. And it really starts, and the key for me is relationships. I find that people want to do business with people. And confidence grows with being known. And the ability to be known allows for trust to build. And that's one of those key things that I've tried to base my relationships on. One is getting to know folks and then earning their trust over time. And Lou, for me, it starts with something that I think is often overlooked, which is some humility. Because, it's pretty clear that in this space that we're in, there's a lot of this chest thumping. And I know more than you know, and I will freely confess that I try to get with people who know a whole lot more about the details of cyber, its depth and breadth, than myself. I like to focus on business impact, business outcome. Tell some stories to the C-suite and those responsible for risk so they can have some awareness to make informed decisions. And so that's been my model when I was convincing the CEO of something in the early days. And again, relationship business to me is where it begins and ends.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So those relationships are with the C-suite, but all throughout the org as well, I imagine.
It is. And again, in the complex nature of cyber in particular, when we think about that, some of the smartest people in the room are the C-suite, but that's not their forte 95% of the time. Therefore, condensing it and delivering it in a way that doesn't cause them to want to draw back or acronym,
Yeah, heavy.
Yeah. Heavy.
Yeah.
They actually really like to understand, what's the risk profile and what's my outcome. And, we can make a cost benefit justification around it.
Yeah. So the secret is to have those relationships, but it's also to understand how to speak to them, especially when it comes to cyber, because cyber can be a complicated topic and it can be very acronym focused. It can be very technical. But, for trusted advisors, you've got the advantage of having come from an IT background. You've got a tech background. So you're comfortable, kind of getting into the weeds a bit if it goes there. But you understand how to pull yourself out and speak at a higher level so the executives understand that basically.
Yes. I would call myself a snorkeler in today's world. At one time, I might have been a scuba diver that could go deep. But again, with an ecosystem, and relationships are both client facing as well as partner facing. They're all equally important. And one of those other key features of relationships is empathy, I think.
Yeah.
Try to place yourself and, understand. If we think about that word, really, it means to stand under, be standing in the shoes they're in, and then addressing things from that perspective. And so I like to use that approach. And, often the IT folks internally, or the hybrid situation that they may find themselves, the C suite may be hearing the same thing from them. So it's very confirming or validating, or it may give them some business case emphasis around a technology presentation. So all those things, I'm happy to be a bridge and a conduit and a facilitator of those types of things. And, that relationship with the channel partners really is the key there. And I invest just as heavily in those relationships. Frankly, Lou, I want to get to know them. And if integrity and do the right thing is there, then I want to explore the value of the widget and the offering. If they aren't there, they could have the best widget, but it won't matter in the long run. So that's my secret, if there is such a thing. It's not really a secret so much as just trying to stay consistent. Not that I am, but I aspire to be more consistent as I progress.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big one. Listen, being having integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, establishing trust. Things can go wrong, but ensuring that you're always trying to do the right thing by the customer, also by the suppliers. That's how one builds a relationship, or basically a reputation as well. But for those TAs that are trying to get into cyber, that maybe they haven't dipped into it yet, or they're interested but they're not technical, they don't have your background. How do you speak to them? How would you help them at trying to get into cyber? Maybe they've sold telecom or bandwidth or data center, and they know cyber is a really good thing, but they just have kind of this intimidation or wall getting over it. Any advice for them?
Yeah, great question. I think there's some very simple phrases that can help folks get introduced to cyber, and a couple of them that I'm happy to share is, cyber's agnostic to industry, location, and size. That means there isn't a client or a prospect on the planet who doesn't have to address cyber in some shape, form, or fashion. And if anyone ever told someone getting into this space, 100%, I know it all, I have one piece of advice. I want you to run fast as you can the opposite direction, because that isn't true. And even if it happened to be true, before the sentence is complete, it won't be true. That's the evolutionary and expansive way that the threats are evolving. And that's one of the reasons there's the number of ecosystem partners that I have, the depth and breadth of that. And so lean into those relationships. Again, my advice would be to do it relationship wise. Get to know your partners that are going to be there with you, and articulate things that raise awareness to the prospects and clients that you're going to see. If you've already got a relationship with them, there's a level of trust there. And, I like to think about things. Can we explore this? And often there's some great thought leadership that can be brought by a partner if you're in the channel, and allow that. And if you trust them and have a relationship with them, the right ones.
Yeah. So kick that door open. That's what we say. We say you don't have to have the conversation, just know the right questions to ask. And which is, what are you doing right now? Do you feel comfortable with your cyber posture? What are some of the questions you ask to kind of scrape up, break loose some of those opportunities?
Yeah. I often ask them, I say, how do you feel about cyber, and just in their silence? So it's like, how about we try to remove the we don't know what we don't know from the equation? And that's usually a great starting spot. I ask them things like, well, what's your roadmap? And again, if you hear crickets, go, well, let's work on what it might look like to create a roadmap. And if they have one, well, where are you? Because it's often in the early days of a journey with cyber, there's this, I've checked those boxes now. And this
Exactly.
is a journey, and the journey is the destination. And I often I have the privilege of working closely with a significant insurance brokerage group. And so for their perspective, when you get around to things like cyber insurance, there's boxes to check. And the mantra was, can I check those boxes? And yet the truth is, as much as they really need that policy in their drawer, you don't want to ever pull it out.
Hmm.
It is not the be all end all. And I would advise folks that would come back and say things like, I'm in the cloud, I'm fine. I've got cyber insurance, I'm fine. I've got third parties that handle that. There's some stats that will raise your eyebrows around how often either internal humans are doing this, or a supplier or a vendor is a cause. And so, it's again, there is no one size fits all, and it's evolving and ongoing. Frankly, I would say it's been the number one business risk, and maybe AI may bump it for a year or two, but still cybersecurity rides over the top of that.
Yeah, we're gonna speak about AI in a second because I have the
Yeah,
obligatory AI question in there, so we'll
of
get to
course.
that. But AI, just to kind of put a point in that one, AI is like AI security and AI governance is data governance and data security because that's what you're concerned about. You're happy that AI is helping you out, but you just don't want it leaking company secrets because to the public, basically.
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. And I think back 4 or 5 years ago, and we were really, really, and still are greatly concerned by shadow IT. But frankly, shadow AI is running very fast and furious toward the front of the line,
Oh yeah.
for
Oh yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so, there's that again, just to kind of, look back at what you were saying, the silver bullet approach of a vendor is like, "Yep, we can solve all your problems, just sign on the dotted line." That's definitely, oh, run, be afraid. But also for TAs that are trying to get into the channel, bringing in the experts and then trying to figure out what, will speak to how you're going to get the customer to start to speak about their, cyber program and feel comfortable about it.
Yes, yes, and often ask for just one thing that they might need.
Right.
The idea of the magnitude of cyber across the platform of risk. Discovering where they are in a roadmap and where they are on their journey, and understanding how their budget and things interact with that journey. Often you can find an opportunity to be another set of eyes,
Yep.
or perhaps one of your partners is willing to maybe do a courtesy review just to give them some awareness. And that often leads to, oh, well, there's some things here that have been discovered. Would you like some help in addressing them?
Yeah. As much as it's a red flag for vendors to be like, "We can solve all of your problems," it's also a red flag for a customer to say, "Hey, we have cyber covered," because, we both know no one has cyber fully covered, even at the highest especially at the highest levels of spend and headcount and all of that. So, speaking of size of company and industries, what are you seeing? What are some of the trends you're seeing? Especially you've got a long career, doing this where, are you seeing certain industries come online with cyber that you haven't seen before? Certain company size, what's that look like?
Yeah, again, I go back to my statement about being agnostic, and what I'm seeing is the head is pulling out of the ground. The ostrich buried head scenario that used to be, I'm just going to hope we're fine, and that truly isn't the case. And that can no longer be your answer. Is, I hope we don't get hit. That's just not an effective strategy anymore. So, I'm seeing that moving all the way down to the lowest level companies. Unfortunately, I'm working with one now who literally told me that. And now I'm helping them because they've decided it was so devastating, they're going to sell their company.
Oh, wow.
But the acquirer wants to know the same things that they didn't address. And so we still are going to have to go in and just show that on behalf of the acquirer. So, there's tremendous damage for not addressing at the lower levels. What I'm seeing is the multi-tiered vendor supplier chain risk is just exploding. And we all know this if we're in the space for any length of time. And when you think about it, people that rely, I think about automobile dealerships as an example from not that long ago, about 18 months ago, a couple of years ago, almost half of the industry was specifically connected in one shape, form, or fashion to one supplier. And guess what? The bad actors are very keenly aware of the multiplied attack vectors if you work your way up the supply chain. And so mid-tier companies that are relying heavily and have said, no, we're good, need to realize that there's no 100% guarantee at any level, regardless of the quality of the folks that are in charge. It's certainly a risk to address.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have your internal team where they might be solid and be able to catch stuff, and it might be an environment, maybe they don't have 15 global offices or something. Maybe they've got just satellite offices in a local area or something that's not a huge footprint. And maybe they're in an industry that doesn't expose a lot externally, like a SaaS platform is a lot different than perhaps manufacturing or something like that. But all of that considered, what you're talking about is the supply chain risk, the third parties that are in there, like the manufacturing device, the big machine that has an out of date operating system that the third party has been charging a fee perhaps to maintain, right? But guess what? They haven't been maintaining it. The operating system's end of life. They didn't give guidance to the customer that you need to segment this off necessarily. And then all of a sudden, they've got an attacker in their environment. Even if their team was top notch, there's no way they could have prevented that because they have no control over the third party.
Absolutely. And I've actually gone to calling it nth instead of
And
nth level.
yeah, because it could be fourth. There's actually fourth party risk, which is the
Correct.
suppliers to your third parties. So
And your suppliers have suppliers that are
yeah,
also, it really just is more like a spider web looking thing than a cascading thing these days. It's so interconnected. The other thing I'm seeing it, and particularly in construction and energy and where there's just a preponderance of these new industrial Internet of Things and other sensors and things of that nature. I was in some discussions around operational technology versus IT, and this belief that OT is pristine and fully protected. And the reality is, after a lengthy debate over that, I conceded that this person could say OT is fully protected, but it has ingress and egress points that interact, and a lot of data that's captured at the OT level is very important for business case decisions. Therefore, let's agree that your perimeter needs some protection.
oh yeah. Well, listen, OT, that's a whole topic, and we won't dive too deeply into that. But one word, Stuxnet. If they could have gotten that kind of malware on, and of course it was a nation state or a number of nation states that created it. That was an air gapped system, etc. But we've worked with customers with these OT environments. The OT environments still need to be updated, and we found out that the processes that they were using to update, when they would, it's a completely air gapped closed environment, and then they would connect an internet connected computer to that environment to update it. It's like right there, there's the hole. So it's
Yeah.
really, yeah, an interesting conundrum. And so, yeah, to your point, Stacey, there is no 100% protection. There's no, silver bullet. And there's always risk. It's just the organization's appetite for risk. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Another area that's really popping right now is the combination of the man in the middle website combined with access broker capabilities where you can just go grab, for hardly anything, grab thousands of credentials and do some man in the middle activities, and folks that have a quality looking website may not have a quality protected website, and that
Yeah. Oh,
bad
yeah.
guys are notorious about finding those gaps.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that we like to speak about, rather than because there are so many ways to get in, I think a lot of customers have, and a lot of people in general have breach fatigue. I mean, if you're like everyone else, I know I have at least 4 or 5 different free ID protection logins because of all the breaches that have happened across the multiple, companies. So we don't speak about breach as much. That's almost to your point earlier, a given. So it's more about an ROI because you, I'm sure, have been part of those incident responses. We obviously do those all the time, and we see the impact that it has on companies when they don't do, they have that security debt or they make those assumptions that, hey, we're good to go. And then all of a sudden they're down for 2, 3 weeks, even if they get their data back, even if they don't have to pay a ransomware, they have a productivity hit, and that has a follow-on effect with customers and things like that. So, I think the ROI,
Yes.
yeah. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there. And, the other part of it is I often would ask C-suite folks, what do you think your reputational risk profile would look like in an instance like that? I don't know how to quantify that. I don't know that we fully can quantify that aspect of it. And I agree with you. Fatigue is real. I like to always come about conversations with the prospect of let's do some proactive measures and let's build that stack, if you will, of proactive measures. Really, what we're trying to do is harden the target so that at least at some level, there's going to be less interest in your infrastructure and your company if you look to be a harder target. And so, try to reframe that from being uh, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Let's raise some awareness. Let's talk about what's possible. There's some very no cost and very low cost things that start the journey going. And that's one of the things I have found in trying to build trust is just to give some courtesy advisory to folks that I don't know what I don't know, and where do I start? And if you already have a relationship with an organization and you can bring some expertise to bear either through their channel or if you have that already, uh, I would say that's like spreading broadcasting seed. And it's also, frankly, and I certainly am a commercial oriented organization, but I also aspire to try to finish well and make a difference. And I would love the opportunity to continue to try to help folks, particularly when I think about nonprofits and school districts.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, oh, what can we do? Here's some things you might want to consider.
Yeah. They're hit hard, especially the school districts. We've done some responses at educational institutions, both large ones and regional, local ones. It's not pretty, and the fact that it's an open environment, they don't have the resource to protect themselves. I mean, there's a play there to say I believe that they're need eventually. I think it'll evolve to where there is an kind of a police force for at least state and local level for organizations like education, utilities, things like that. We kind of have that, but not quite. The FBI jumps in when they need to, um, for some of the bigger hacks or some of the more critical ones. But almost like a cyber national guard. That's been an idea that we've spoken about a bit. So we'll see. It's inevitable, I think, unfortunately, that we're gonna have to get there because as you've seen, the industry is can be really behind. I mean, you've been doing this for 40 plus years. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. Nothing has really changed with the way that we've spoken about this stuff. Like, hey, you need to protect yourself. 30 years ago, even I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, you might have been able to go back to paper or, 2025, like, but now, yeah, you're not going to paper. Everyone is a tech company to what, your point earlier of every company needs some kind of protection. So, go pivoting a bit to, like, what excites you about, kind of what's going on in the industry and the future?
Well, I think one of the things that excites me is now that there's more visibility and emphasis on it, we can do more good.
Mm,
We can get into the conversation easier. We could bring value that can be justified, and we can be alongside organizations helping to de-risk and mitigate risk and also transfer risk. All of those things are available, but you have to make that commitment. And there's a lot more listening ears and inquiring minds wanting to know more than ever before. And so, from that standpoint, um, someone had asked one time, what's your lead gen plan? And frankly, sad to say in some respects, but happy in others, that it's so prevalent now that it's it's really about trying to do the best you can and build the right relationships and partners to be able to address proactively is the preferred way. I tried to get this released to me, and I wasn't successful. But if you're old enough to remember commercials when we didn't fast forward to them and or paid to not stream, without the ads, a Fram oil commercial, and they would hold a can of oil, and behind it was a car on a rack, and it's the difference of, hey, let's get some oil in the engine and get it running smoothly and protect those vital things that make your company grow, and the obvious in the background was it's more difficult if you're reacting.
yeah. So being proactive excites you, being able to help,
Yes.
yeah, which is you're speaking my language, obviously. That's what we do.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, it's always better to do it proactively than reactively, and you brought up the acquisition before too earlier. During due diligence, there's gonna be a price bump, drop, basically. They're going to say, "Hey," and they're always looking, you sign the papers, you've been through a couple exits yourself, you know how it goes, like, "Whoa, big number," everyone's excited, and then they start to due diligence. It's like, "Well, wait a what about this? What about this?" So, yeah, when it gets to the cyber part, you're actually there's the ROI for owners that wanna have an exit. It's like, "Oh, you actually" and we've been part of this. We actually have one of our, clients that just got acquired, and actually, this happened a couple times. Their security program, because they were working with us, is tighter than the acquirer's program, and so that was a strong point during the negotiations for them where they're like, "Okay, we're going to adopt what you've done and apply it now to the greater entity." So you can that there's the proactive pitch that will, a C-suite person or an owner founder will understand. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And I've advised a number of companies that go ahead and dedicate themselves to taking the proactive model. I said, now, like, take that and use that as a business differentiator. Let your clients and prospects know we care about this. We're doing things about this to try to preempt those things from happening, do the best they can. And some of my advisory is more business slash cyber, but in due diligence and talking to people that are considering making acquisitions, I always tell them to have a model that says we're going to do the investigation of cyber. We'll give you the opportunity to address it. We will have a two-phase transaction, and we'll withhold X amount for contingent liabilities. And it's never a full payment anymore unless you have agreed to and adhered to the criteria that's laid forward. And so it really highlights the fact that how can you address risks that you're unaware of, right? And we both know the amount of time that bad actors can be dormant. And so it's just one of those things, again, being proactive in the acquisition space. So yeah, that's a biggie. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a big one. Both
Yeah,
both sides of the equation.
that's right. That's great advice too, to hold on and have that bucket for, okay, we're gonna wait, this is a year out, we're going to see. You get this if nothing bad happens after a year. We don't, there's no surprises, which is typical for the tax liability as well. So tax and cyber liability. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So on to the obligatory AI question. What how are you using AI today? Is it something that's part of your workflow?
Yeah, great question. So and, there was a time probably from about 1978 to 1983, I felt like I was on the front lines. And now I can talk about the front lines of days gone by, and I have a very close relationship and a relationship with Equity Share, with a young man in his 20s who is amazing in automation and AI, and then others wrapped around him. And so we are addressing that both with agentic or the agent workflow type model, and then also exploring generative, but very carefully there, because my belief is you can still see something that's generated artificially. It's going to get better, but at the end of the day, you can do some curation and things like that. And from that, then distill and then put the narrative around it to share uh, cyber bullets, if you will, or cyber conversations can be led around, starting with gathering more efficient gathering of intel from different sources, and then you try to again turn that into a business impact, business outcome discussion, and tell some real world stories around that. So yeah, more on the automative side than an agent side than the generative side. I'm kind of old school. I like to write my own narratives, but I do like to get the research done a little faster, a lot faster,
Oh
many
yeah.
times faster.
Oh yeah. Prospecting, right? If you're prospecting
Yes.
for a new customer, that's just brilliant to be able to type it in, give a couple URLs, and then all of a sudden you've got a good overview. So it's saving time. AI is saving a lot of time.
Yes. We have I've had relationship with New Zealand, to a smaller degree Australia for many years. If I move my head this way, you can actually see New
Oh,
Zealand,
there you
and
go. Yeah.
had 20 plus years now of interactions with New Zealand, and still work with some of the organizations there. And one of them has a particularly innovative product and service. And the interesting thing is now with AI and the curation ability, you can customize their service quite easily. And so it's really propelled them forward in that. So I'm aware of companies that are using it to their advantage. I'm aware of companies that are using it a bit, I would say, loosely.
Mhm.
And I would certainly give some advice that you want to be very careful, and you want to have clear communication across your organization about what is allowed, not allowed. I would suggest sandboxes for testing that are on a totally segmented network away from everything else, and use some innovation to play around in the sandbox and do all your curating there. And frankly, particularly with so many companies that have trade secrets or their IP and things of that nature, I would never advise for that to go into any AI prompt or any type of questions that you're going to pose to AI, at least at this stage.
Yeah, agreed. There's privacy policies that say, "Hey, we're not training on this data," but guess what? They're hungry for data, and we've already seen the way that they've treated data. So I think, yeah, do not trust. For any of the really sensitive stuff. I would say, yeah, spin up your own LLM. Makes sense.
I think the other thing I'd throw in, just maybe a final point on it, would be there's a lot of hesitancy for folks that may think their jobs are at online. So, offer some training in prompt engineering or some other tools that could allow your employees that may be at risk to find new ways to be valuable to the organization. That's another thing that I'm seeing is a little bit of headbutting and resistance from those that think they're threatened by it rather than embracing it and maybe finding a way forward in an altered but still a productive career path.
Yeah, I mean, this is the transition from the horse to the automobile, or like really just a major change. So being afraid of it, or being, assuming that it's not going to be big, or even on the other side thinking it's going to be something that you need to avoid completely, not a good strategy at all. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so is there a story, Stacey, that you have that, like a personal story that demonstrates where cyber has had like a direct impact on you personally, on your life, or someone you know?
Definitely some people that I know. From my own personal story, I'm thankful to say I haven't had a scar there of any magnitude. My wife and I think one of her credit cards once was for a short time in play, but
That's
those are
normal.
easily
Yeah,
resolved and all. Um, and so from the perspective of um, an organization's third generation, Lou, and the grandson was as old as I am, and they had all they did was move dirt. That was their whole business. And they moved dirt, and the grandfather had signed up some clients back in his day that would be up and comers, and they now occupy tall buildings in major cities. And so that client asked them to do some things cyber security wise, um, and I was asked to speak to the grandson again, who's quite and I actually met with him twice, and he said, I believe you, Stacy, but our grandfather was a risk taker. We're a risk taker. All we're doing is moving dirt. And we're too small. Now, unfortunately, that that up and coming business, being a highly sophisticated business, stopped the attempted cyber attack that came through that organization. But that organization lost that third generation client and severely impacted their company. And that was one of the last things I remember was his remorse and not wanting to go from the risk-taking model to what's an acceptable risk, what's the impact, and what's the outcome. And so I think about that story. I often share it, the risk and the reward and how you equate that in today's world.
that's a good one. I mean, it's a powerful one, a powerful story, and it definitely illustrates like this person. It's interesting, like being a risk taker. That's like, okay, I'm going to, bet on a new technology, or I'm going to maybe pivot the business to a new, area or something. Not okay. I know that that to me, what you're telling me just blows me away, because it's like, okay, I'm driving a car on the Autobahn at 150 miles per hour, and I know the brakes don't work, and I don't have airbags, and I'm just wearing a seatbelt, and if anything bad, but I'm a risk taker. It's like, well, I don't know. There's good risk and there's bad risk, I guess.
Exactly. There's a difference between taking risk and being reckless. And
Yeah,
they aren't the same, but they can
yeah.
be equated as the same.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this might be divisive, but I feel the same way about motorcycle helmets. My family lives in Florida. I go down there. I don't know if Texas has the same laws, where I mean, it's pure freedom. If you don't want to wear a helmet, you don't have to. Is it the same there in Texas?
You don't have to wear a helmet. And I always tell people, I said, you're just a meat shield for the helmet.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
speak to an EMS person, speak to the people that
Yes.
respond to those. They're like, if you had a helmet, yeah, you might be, have some major damage, but you'll survive without a helmet. It's just like the odds that you're playing. So if you've watched Squid Game, yeah, there's a funny scene at the end of Squid Game about odds and them calculating certain odds. But I'm not a huge fan of that show, to be honest, but that popped in my head. I just watched it recently. So so let's talk about you personally, Stacey. I mean, you've had such a great career, long career. You're in Texas. Obviously, you've been running Stillwater Ecosystem for a long time now. Before that, you were in. It looks like the oil and gas area, which, by the way, they have had their own issues, right? With hey, we're just pulling, old dinosaur remnants out of the
Yeah.
ground, so we don't need to be protected, right? It's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
well, how are you communicating with those wells that are in Papua New Guinea or, somewhere else?
Exactly.
Yeah. But, so you've been around, the oil and gas industry and went to Ole Miss. I hope you guys
Howdy tighty.
yeah, I hope you beat Florida this year. That'll be good because that's our arch rival. But yeah, that's a good kind of like summary. But when you started Stillwater, what was like the impetus for that? Were you like, hey, I'm just done with IT or
Yeah, yeah. No, 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 I mean, I couldn't spell oil and gas, when I left, Mississippi. I worked on the only computer in my hometown, uh, and so MIS education at Ole Miss and working on the only computer in my hometown. It was 18 miles away from the school, and a good friend of mine who had moved out there sent me clippings in the paper. That's how long ago it was for everybody that's listening. And so, I came out to, the Texas area, and, everybody said oil and gas is where you need to be, so I jumped in. I didn't know what I was doing, and most of the team that was in IT there was, some of them were about my age now, and I'm 22 years old rolling into there and, utilized some of the new tools and gadgets that I had learned, and others were working on, for many people, you'd have to go Google it or go to a museum to see some of the tools and Fortran and COBOL and all those languages. And so, a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine who taught me everything about oil and gas, and I gave him all the keys that I had for the new methods of, relational databases, and I told him what SQL stood for and things like that. And so we leveraged that and had a great long run. And I stayed in there, and I thought I'd spend my whole career in that industry with that company. And as often happens, we made acquisitions and treated people like people. And then we were acquired, and it was spreadsheet analysis on how I was supposed to cut a team that was my family, not just coworkers. Relationships matter. They always have. They always will. And so that's really where Stillwater was born. And back in the days when long ago, I went to Barnes and Nobles, bought an Instacort book, and had one of those floppy drives that you put in it. And a friend of mine said, if you take an extra $35, you can get incorporated pretty quickly in Texas. Buddy of mine and I drove all the way to Austin and had my $35 and walked in, and the lady across the counter said, how can I help you? I told her I need to get my company started because I'm going to do my own thing. I've got my money here and I understand. She said, slow down, slow down. I said, young man, you keep your $35. You go around 3 blocks away and have you a nice, brisket taco breakfast and come back after a few hours and I'll take care of you. So Stillwater literally started in a converted breezeway for my detached garage. I enclosed it, put a T1 at the back of the house, and all my kids'
wow.
friends are coming over because back then
Yeah.
that was crazy.
Huge. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah, it was big time. And so from that, it started from there, and Stillwater's been around since the late '90s, and it's had iterations. We were an MSP before that was a 3-letter acronym. And we were very fortunate, as I mentioned, in working with New Zealand for a number of years. And there's fiber that runs all the way from New Zealand and Australia to the West Coast. And one of my really cool relationships was with someone who was the chief technology officer at Weta, which is a New Zealand uh, film company that made The Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
And we took those same computers that made that third movie, and we used them to process seismic processing software from a Texas-based company who had New Zealand holdings. And my one and only time to make it to the Houston Business Journal, and it had my picture, but unfortunately, instead of my face, it had, if you've seen the movies, you know, the orcs and they had the white
No.
imprint. Yeah. So the good news, and everybody's teasing me. They say, "I really love that picture."
That's hilarious. And you had no idea they were gonna do that.
No, no, no. They actually just interviewed me, and I think it was like Lord of the Rings meets Energy Capital or something like that.
That's
So
hilarious.
that was the surprise to me and everyone else. But I would say this: I've enjoyed building the relationships at Stillwater. The name comes from two things. He leads me beside Stillwater. And then a high school friend of mine was introducing me to someone and said, kind of one of those, and said, Stillwater runs deep. And so that's where the name came from. It's been a journey that I will continue because I really enjoy what I do. Trying to be a little more philanthropic on the advisory side as I move forward, and well positioned with these ecosystem leaders, or trusted leaders. Happy to say that your organization, we met because of relationship, and you guys are in that camp. And I really appreciate the opportunity just to share with you, and hopefully one or two things that were said might be useful to others.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Stacy. What are you doing in your spare time other than philanthropic stuff before we close up?
Well, I got 10 grandkids,
Oh
and
my gosh.
yeah, and they're all in Texas. So I've got my
Wow.
loop that I make. And I enjoy golf. I actually played Tour 18 a couple of days ago, which has replica holes, and I parred the Sawgrass 17, the Island Green. I parred that one, and I was one over in Amen Corner
Nice.
from the Masters groups
Wow.
of holes there. So I enjoy that, and do a little fishing from time to time. But I put them in the right order: grandkids, golf, fishing.
Yeah. Fishing. That sounds good. Always the grandkids first. I'm not far from that, I don't think. Well, hopefully I am because my boys are still in high school, but a couple years from now, I think maybe.
Nice.
So yeah.
One last thing there. The good news is, look, the beauty of being a parent is when they're the grandkids, you spoil them and hand them back.
Right, yeah, and then the kids get angry at you because 'cause they're like, "You can't do that. They're not allowed to do that at home." It's like, "Well, that's what being a grandparent is about, right?"
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
great. That's great. So where can people connect with you online?
Well, certainly I'm on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and that's the best way. And you won't find any fancy smancy website, because basically we have one that's pretty basic, because it really is. Someone said, "Well, can you give me a one pager on cybersecurity?" And I said, "No, I don't know if I can give you a novel that could cover cybersecurity." And the additions of it would have to be updated so often that it doesn't make sense. And so I really try to stay current. And I'm more likely to put something out on LinkedIn that's going to be a pause and reflect than it's going to be the latest widget that I've discovered. Um, and those are really the platforms. I mean, we really are trying to get philanthropic around thought leadership, and that's back to my friend I mentioned. That's a young man with automation. We're trying to get some things we can share on a regular basis, and we're hopeful that's going to help everyone to some degree raise awareness. and maybe take some action that they hadn't considered.
Good. Well, it sounds like there's a release coming out soon, so stay tuned for that. When you're ready, pop it on LinkedIn. So best place to find you, LinkedIn, stillwaterecosystem.com, but don't you won't be blown away by that website.
It's intentional. Somebody
Yeah.
said, "Are you gonna?" We'll probably start putting stuff out there once we start this cadence of thought leadership with a little more regularity. It's usually a little bit more like this, or I actually enjoy speaking live and in person because there's an essence of being in person with folks and that dialogue that happens afterwards that sometimes my granny used to say it's better felt than telt. It's almost like if you look someone in the eye, shake them and have a conversation over coffee or a beverage or whatever, there's something there that's just hard to replicate in the virtual world.
100%. That's becomes more important in the world of AI and all of these manufactured everything online. Well, overwhelming news that we really don't need news as much as we're getting it. So, yeah, it's I think the face-to-face human interaction is becoming even more important. So, Stacey Horne, thank you so much.
Lou, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity and then invite.
And thank you to those that are watching and or listening. If you learned something today or laughed, please tell someone about this podcast. Thanks again, Stacey. And this has been another exciting episode of Channel Security Secrets. See you soon. That's a wrap for this episode of Channel Security Secrets. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes, guest info, and more episodes, visit us at channelsecuritysecrets.com. Channel Security Secrets is sponsored by Cyber Defense Group. When it comes to protecting your business, don't settle for reactive. Partner with experts who build resilience from the ground up.